Hello, welcome everybody for our first Quacking Code live stream, something new that we are trying. And the goal of those sessions is obviously to quack and to on a specific technical topic, and then to code a little bit to have something pragmatic. And it's just before the Christmas holidays, so we'll do pretty light today and talk a bit about SQL and how the new features that DuckDB bring to SQL also. So if you're new to DuckDB, it's also a good session for you. We'll be sharing directly some code that you can follow along during the live stream. So please let us know where you are from if you're joining us live. I'm based in Berlin, so it's pretty late already, 9. But let me know if you're taking breakfast or lunch. I mean, you don't necessarily need to have a specific time zone, but usually we take the breakfast in the morning and the lunch in the noon. So yeah, Greece. Oh, so I see we have Belgium, Finland. Do we have someone from Berlin? So nice to see a lot of. Right, I'm based in Boulder. Yeah. Right. So during those sessions, I always invite some guests, and will it be external guests or internal guests? And today we have an internal guest, so someone also from MotherDuck, Alex. Alex, welcome. How are you doing?
Howdy, everybody. Doing great, doing great.
So Alex, what exactly can you do a bit a quick intro? Like, what actually do you do at MotherDuck?
Oh, sure. So I'm a forward deployed software engineer at MotherDuck, which is a made up title. It's kind of ridiculous, but what does it mean? It's a little bit of everything. I'm kind of the first person to talk with our customers in a lot of cases. So the first time we're meeting them, learning about their requirements, their use cases, and kind of brainstorming, dreaming with them. But then I'm also kind of the first line of defense on the tactical troubleshooting in terms of maybe here's a code snippet to solve what you need. Maybe there's an integration that you need some help with, working with a different ecosystem tool, um, or bug hunting on our own platform. So a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a lot. So it's a bit more advanced than sales. It's something between sales engineer and a solution architect, but you're still doing sometimes the integration yourself.
It's definitely a mix, and that's I think part of it is you kind of get to choose what you like, and I happen to like the ecosystem side, so I kind of picked up a few extra tasks there. But the core
Cool.
of it is the learning what the customers need, helping make sure we build what they need, and then helping them tactically as they use MotherDuck.
And what's your initial story with DuckDB?
Oh, sure. So my background's industrial systems engineering, and I spent 9 years at Intel. And while I was there, I was basically a part of, I'll call it shadow IT. So we complied with all the IT regulations, but we did all the
Ninja?
stuff that we did all the stuff that IT didn't want to build. Like the kind of intermediate solution, the prototyping stuff that it's not the 3-year plan, it's the 1-week plan. And as a part of that, we built a self-service analytics platform, and it was designed to connect all the hundreds of on-premise databases that Intel still runs on in all of their factories. Um, and the best way to combine all that data together ended up being DuckDB. So I found it way back in 2020, and I hammered it with a million crazy SQL queries, and it didn't break
Wow.
a sweat, no problem. And then it has since gone on a hockey stick curve, and I've been along for the ride. So found it just with a Google search, and then just started using it. Really liked it. Tweeted about it a lot, and then I got tied in.
Yeah, you do like Twitter, right? I've seen that.
I do. I enjoy it. It's fun. I feel like I don't know. I wish it was managed a little differently, but I like the people I get to talk with on there.
Cool. And yeah, that's like the shadow IT thing. I think we could talk for an hour about this, but I'm really curious. Do you think there like are there other companies that like have dedicated team like that?
we never called ourselves that. I've kind of learned that's what we were
Okay.
after I left. So we weren't exactly upfront about we're the Shadow IT team. But
Yeah,
I've,
yeah.
I've learned
Okay,
since
that
that,
makes sense.
right? I've learned since then that there are a lot of places where you need a spectrum of solutions. If you're running, your customer orders, the system that takes an order and submits an order is going to be built by your corporate IT, and it's got to work 99.99% of the time. Your reporting tools frequently are built by other teams. It can be a real
Yeah.
spectrum of people building it themselves, people having a team that uses commercial software, or maybe an internal platform team that builds an internal platform. And we were kind of that internal platform team model.
Yeah, no, but that makes sense. I mean, I've seen like some team kind of like bootstrapping thing, especially where like with large corporate company, right? You need to kind of take some shortcuts, but okay, you were not like advertised as a shadow team
No,
later.
and we follow the rules. We had a couple people that used to work in IT on our team, so we had a couple ringers where we
Yeah.
we weren't your typical shadow IT hacking stuff together. We were, I think, building something pretty neat. So
No,
DuckDB
that's
helped.
great. Yeah, I mean, I guess. And so we have, I have a small SQL quiz, and Alex is now freaking out because he doesn't know any of those answers. But it's also for you, for the audience, for the people live stream. It's I think there is interesting things to know about SQL. At least I learned it when I did the quiz. So first, do you know about which year when SQL was developed?
Oh, I should know better than I do. Um, I'm gonna
Roughly
go with
where?
roughly, I don't know, how about 77? 1977?
Oh, that's really close. Yeah, 1974. Yeah,
Okay.
so 1974. And if you want to try, by the way, I have a multiple question around SQL. So if you want to test your knowledge, please don't use ChatGPT. We all know the answer at the end, right? So just to test your culture around SQL. So yeah, SQL was developed first in 1974. And do you know which popular song was released that year? I'm gonna give you a hint. Uh, Sweden,
Hmm.
Swedish band.
I do not. Oh, the most popular song in that year. Oh man. Well, I mean, ABBA is a pretty good hint. They're from the Swedish band.
Yeah,
We're gonna
you're
go with
close.
what do I know from ABBA songs? I only know a few, so we'll go with Dancing Queen by ABBA.
Oh no, that
Worth a
was
shot.
Waterloo. Waterloo
Waterloo,
was
excellent.
released. So now, whenever you're gonna hear that song, you're gonna say, "That's the year sequel was released." I'm not sure
I
it's
am
gonna
gonna do
be a
that.
bang at a cocktail party, but that's how to remember. Anyway, and so do you know who developed actually sequel?
Oh, I think I might be a big enough database nerd to know that. So what was this? Was this IBM System R doing
Yeah,
this?
yeah,
All right.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So IBM and the first database that they were using was System R. And do you know the first name of SQL? So that's a fun one.
Oh,
So
what was it
before it
first
was
called?
named SQL,
Before it was
what is it?
sequel. At one point, it was the word sequel spelled out, like
Yeah,
SEQUEL.
my God,
Um,
you're you're an history book.
oh
I
gosh.
thought I
Well,
could trap you. So yeah, sequel. So sequel, like spelled out as you said, like sequel movie, right? Um, so and it was standing for structured English query language, and then they shorted out to SQL SQL. And do you know what's the name of the standard version of SQL and who is maintaining it?
um, I know it's ANSI sequel. ANSI does the like every 3 years or so they put one out. But I have no idea what
Yeah,
ANSI stands for.
yeah. NC is a private non-profit organization, and you have also ISO, so which is they basically work together for those standards. So regarding this standard, do you know when was the last one released, the SQL standard?
They did one in 2023, I think. It's got the new graph syntaxes
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. And so actually before that, I mean, there was one in 19, as I can see, but mostly like the last big one was in 2016. So between 2016 and this year, we don't have that much. So it's pretty
Hmm.
crazy, right? Because if you think in terms of data word timeline, right?
It's
That
changed a
that's
lot.
that's a
Yeah.
lot. Yeah. So just to give you an idea, Snowflake was publicly launched in 2014. So yeah, they basically been living on certain standard for quite some time, and that explains why also we have quite some divergence maybe with the different data warehouse, because the current standard hasn't moved a lot. What do you think about that?
Yeah, my quip about this is that it stands for structured query language, not standard query language. We definitely can't get everyone to agree, and it's kind of been that way all along. It's I think improving over time. People are starting to realize that this is not super fun. There's some new tools coming out to translate back and forth, but yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and so if people want to read about, I just put in in the comment section uh, the blog about the new SQL standard for this year. And as you mentioned, there is some stuff around JSON, which is interesting too, right?
That's true. I think they did finally formalize some of the JSON stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I guess like a lot of companies saw the needs to be able to have more power in the SQL and to for people ingesting unstructured or JSON kind of data into their relational database. But it's also interesting to see how much it lag with like standards coming through, right? Because a lot of databases
Yeah.
have been supporting JSON for a couple of years. Um, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think the way
Um,
that the standards folks do it is they wait for a couple people to build it, and then they see how similar they are, and then they kind of build a standard
eh,
after the fact a little bit. So it's it doesn't really prevent the fragmentation, but at least you kind of
yeah,
learn what's the best way. So once it's finally standardized, it's really good, but it does mean that people do their own thing for a little while.
yeah, indeed. And so coming back to my quiz, what else do I have? Yeah, I think we cover uh, a bit that around the intro. I hope everybody learned something new apart from Waterloo from ABBA, right? uh, but yeah, moving on. Let's talk a bit about tooling and setup around DuckDB and SQL. So what's usually your go-to tooling when you use DuckDB?
Yeah, when I'm implementing like a system with DuckDB, I love the Python client. So that's my go-to if I
Okay.
want to have like a long running thing or a really complicated workflow. That's my favorite. A lot of what I'm doing these days when I'm helping folks out is trying to do the simplest thing possible. So these days I use the CLI a lot because that's kind of the most kind of core part of DuckDB is the command line tool. So I usually
Yeah.
will run that either just I'll run it in a basic terminal, but I'll also run it in VS Code so I can have a SQL file where I edit all my commands, and then I can just kick it off with a one-liner in the CLI. So at least I get some, in both of those, at least I get some syntax highlighting. But
Yeah.
I don't know, that's what I'm usually
Was
using.
what when did you start to use like um the VS Code thing? Because I kind of like discovered this workflow when I started with to work with DuckDB in February, but I think you were using it already before.
Maybe not. Probably later than that. I think I um, I was not a huge terminal user. My previous company, I was a Windows
Okay.
person, so a command prompt is not
Okay.
as nice as the terminal. So I used it when it was required. Uh, But nowadays I'm on Mac, and so getting more and more used to that. VS Code I have used for a couple years, but I hadn't done as much SQL in there. I was mostly just using it for
Yeah.
Python stuff, JavaScript stuff.
Yeah, and let me share to the audience quickly what we are talking about with VS Code. This is something we show in one of our video, but you see my screen, right? Because I don't see you anymore.
Yep.
So what we talk about is that basically when it can work with any terminal or any editor, but the goal is basically you have a SQL file and then you open the DuckDB CLI down here. And when it's there, then you can basically just live. What's cool with that is that you have formatting and syntax alike and also GitHub Copilot. I mean, here I don't need my GitHub Copilot because I have my human copilots, right? I like it there. The goal is that you basically have all the autocomplete, all the feature of the terminal. And what I do, you see, I send command down, and it's just a shortcut. So you can do custom shortcuts in VS Code, and then you can just send it out. And here, as you see, I'm just reading a public CSV, and that's it. I can work like that. So I do like also work like that when it's something that's want to easily repeat, a SQL file, because I found like we're gonna talk about Notebook, but Notebook has their pro and cons for learning and sharing. But yeah, I do like pure SQL, and it's also embraced the simple setup of DuckDB itself, right? So
yeah, and I didn't even have that advanced of a setup. For me, I just run one command of .read, then the name of my SQL file, and it'll just kick them all in one shot. But I'll be using
no, you can you can select you can select multi-line and so on. Everything works. It works pretty great. So that's the one possibility. We have also people using dbehavior. I think you're using a bit dbehavior or not?
Yes, yep. I like dbeaver for if I'm doing a lot of work with tables and I really want to do creating tables, removing them, and all that. It's much nicer to have that exploratory pane on the left-hand side. I also do some work with Postgres, and DuckDB can read Postgres, so it's nice to have a Postgres client right next to my DuckDB. So I do use dbeaver for that. It's kind of my if I'm doing more with physical tables, I'll use dbeaver.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. And then we have other stuff like Harlequin. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. The terminal editor for DuckDB. Probably should cover that in a specific video or live stream, but pretty cool. So, and then we have notebooks, which works also, great. And today we're gonna use to talk more about the specific SQL features of DuckDB, Google Colab, simply because it's super easy to share and to set up. You basically don't need anything. Have you been using Colab for other use cases than sharing and teaching?
A little bit. I work part-time for DuckDB Labs as well, in addition to MotherDuck, so I do documentation for them, and Colab is a nice way to have live documentation where you'll actually write it out in a markdown file, but then, hey, by the way, if you want to go run it, here's a Colab link. So that's probably how I got started with it. We didn't use it internally at Intel. They were Microsoft shop, so no Google Colab there, but I've been enjoying it on the open source side. It's just great to share that link. Just, hey, by the way, check it out.
Yeah, no, definitely. And so I'm gonna share with folks, the Google Colab if you want to join directly, and then I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna dive into that. So Alex, you wrote actually 2 blog posts around SQL feature from DuckDB, right? On the DuckDB website. And I've seen, so I went to those 2 blogs and I've seen a lot of things that I wasn't aware. I wasn't using it. So it's really interesting. We're gonna see that basically there is so first there is stuff that was happening that I didn't realize they were happening because they were not basically not part of a standard, right? And then there is parts, there is just function that I was not aware of, but it's kind of like also challenging to kind of incorporate that in your cache. No, this one.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
Those function. Do you have like in highlight like what's your favorite function? First before diving into the notebook specifically.
Oh, my favorite kind of DuckDB specific SQL thing is a group by all. So instead of having to
Yeah.
group by individual columns, you can group by
Yeah.
and just tell it handle my group by automatically. So nowadays I don't even worry about my group by. It's really nice.
And so and so I think it's like it's really interesting because there is you could say, for example, there is a lot of people starting their SQL journey with DuckDB now, even at the university and so on, because it's super easy to install. But what is fun is that you could say someone that learns, SQL with DuckDB, of course there is group by all. That's totally normal. But you get where I'm going. It's like, no, it's like there is actually stuff done for you, which is great. But I think we should really recognize the effort that is put there because that just seems so natural.
Yeah, and that one in particular, there is at least one other database company that has picked that up and implemented it. They're named after a type of precipitation, but they have group IL as well because we want to make it a standard. So you can't necessarily make it a standard with just one database doing it, but if there's a couple, I think we can get there.
Yeah, indeed. So we're gonna start basically to just install a couple of package. Can you tell me the difference between the DuckDB engine? I'm gonna play it demo so that basically everything is clear also for the audience.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Can you tell me the difference between the DuckDB engine Python package and the DuckDB Python package?
You bet. DuckDB engine is our SQL Alchemy dialect. So SQL Alchemy is a Python ORM, object relational mapper. And it's really good for using Python to determine your schemas instead of SQL if you prefer that. It's also good for migrations, and it integrates well with a lot of other tools. So we're using it here because it powers JupySQL, and that's how JupySQL connects is with the SQL Alchemy driver. Because SQL Alchemy supports so many databases, it makes it easier for things built on top to connect to all different things. So that's the advantage we're using it for here. The creator of DuckDB engine, Eliana, has said, "Oh, I wish I could rename it because it is a tough name that's not exactly the standard SQL Alchemy, but we use it, we love it, we really appreciate the work that she put into building it."
Nice. So yeah, let's just run that. And after basically we do the import, we have DuckDB. Why do we need actually pandas here?
In this case, the JupySQL can return things directly as pandas to you, and that ends up being nicer in a Jupyter notebook, mostly for looking at the table output. It's formatted nicer.
Okay.
But it's actually faster as well. So because pandas is written in C, C++, and so is DuckDB, it can actually transmit the data all at the C++ layer and kind of turn it into Python at the last second. Whereas if you use the Python DB API like fetch all, it has to convert kind of every individual object into a Python object. And I love Python, it's flexible, but the objects have an extra layer of abstraction over like a C type or something like that. So it's faster if you use pandas.
Okay, so that actually I didn't know, but that makes total sense. And so here we have just a couple of setup of configuration, and what we are going to use is SQL magic command, so that basically we can use pure SQL command. And wait, I did something really bad. Apparently people doesn't have access have link to access it. Yeah.
See if you just
anyone with the link. All right, should be solved. Sorry for that, and thank you, Nick, for mentioning that out. So you can actually check back the link I sent on if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, and follow along the collab here. So yeah, I was talking about magic command in SQL. It's just that instead of having, because here we're using a Python runtime basically, but instead of wrapping this into an ugly text string, we can just have pure SQL directly over there. So yeah, so that's basically it. And then we're gonna do one thing. Yeah, we're still gonna use MotherDuck, but we are not going to use the MotherDuck engine. We're basically using the shared database. So MotherDuck has a feature for shared database. So it's basically a DuckDB database in the cloud. And we have a couple of open data sets over there. And so you can actually create an account on DuckDB, on MotherDuck. It's free launch for the moment. So just and super fast. So if you want to have access to those shared data sets, just create your account, and then you can get your service token on your profile. And that's what we are going to fit here. So basically just passing this. So I passed my service token from MotherDuck account. And now I'm just connecting to MotherDuck using this URL. And yeah, here it's basically the same way if you would use a local DuckDB, right, Alex? But we just have the MD MD colon. Can you a bit explain what's happening behind the scene with the extension?
Sure. So in this case, we've partnered really closely with the founders, creators of DuckDB over at DuckDB Labs, and they've added a special hook into DuckDB itself for us, where typically you'd be connecting to DuckDB with a path of where your file is in your local file system. Here's where my file is. If you actually start with MD colon, it's just a special if statement that says, hey, if you start like that, what you actually mean is you want to connect to MotherDuck. And what we're going to do is we're going to automatically install a MotherDuck extension for you in an extensions folder, same place that the other DuckDB extensions go when you install those. And that extension is going to open up a connection to the MotherDuck server. And when we make that connection, we'll go ahead and send you the information about kind of your tables, your views, and what's in your database. And then you can go ahead and hit it with queries. The nice thing about that is some of your queries can run on our server in the cloud, and other ones can run entirely locally if you've already copied the data locally. So you get that nice flexibility.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, and just to give context for those not super familiar with DuckDB extension, so DuckDB has this notion of extension. Is clearly like package that you can install to DuckDB, and you have supported extension from DuckDB Labs that you can just do install. For example, they have extension to connect to HTTP FS, so HTTPS file that hosted on S3 or Google Cloud Storage, or they have also an extension to manage AWS credential, for example. So you can just do install AWS and you have this extension loaded. But here, what's the beauty of it is that everything is happening automatically. So you don't have to install or load any MotherDuck specific extension. And now we are connected to MotherDuck. So basically here, what we're doing is just querying a sample of data, which is, if you look at MotherDuck, let me take that quickly. Our documentation website, you would see where what do we have actually by data set, public data sets. So if that's so MotherDuck documentation website, you go to sample data set and queries, and you have information about the websites, the different simple data that we have, and the simple database actually contain multiple data set and actually available as soon as you create a MotherDuck account. You can play with those, and you have information about those data sets and a couple of example of queries. So just to give you rapid context about where those data set is coming from, coming back to our notebook. So if we run this, so that's the first magic of DuckDB is the from statement, right? I think I'm not sure why this hasn't been done before, or at least from like the database I know, there isn't that supports. Do you have any hint on that?
I think there may have been one that did it previously. I think it might have been a dialect that was part of a BI tool or something. So it may have existed before. So credit to them for being ahead of the time, but it's not widespread. And there's no other popular one that I know of that has it. Um, Part of this goes back to that fun fact that you had about SQL using to be spelled out SEQUEL. It was designed to be
Yeah,
English-like. And it was more like a sentence to say, I want to get these columns from this table. And so it was just meant
yeah,
to be more like spoken word. Uh, but it's always been backwards if you actually think about it. Every
yeah,
intro tutorial you get for SQL is going to have here's the order of statements and here's their execution order and here's how they don't match. But now they can match. How about that?
yeah. So it's for me, it's just crazy the number of time I do a select star the table and then a limit, then just to get a grasp on everything. Because even if you have the metadata, you want to have a quick view, like just like how the actual data looks like, first. Um, and so yeah, I think that's like one of the biggest thing I like about DuckDB. Is really simple. And then the next thing is that we can actually nest directly select. And that's actually still pretty new, was released this year, no?
At the same time as that from only one, so it might be 2 years old by now, but it
Okay, okay.
the basic benefit is you can just reorder the clauses if you want, so you don't have to skip what columns you're grabbing. You can still put it there, but
Yeah,
you can have it in a more natural order. The other really nice thing about this is it helps us with those AI overlords that are coming, right? As soon as you actually give the table information,
yeah,
autocomplete is going to have a much easier job of
yeah,
figuring out what you're probably going to do. So this
yeah.
this even helps out our autocomplete.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting thing is that there is like certain pattern. I think like for documentation, that's also to write documentation that is bot friendly, that can help the AI to parse and understand thing. And I think in the same sense, it's like write programming language that is also I mean, in that context, for example, in that specific use case where the AI basically can tell from the table all the metadata directly information and send you out. So this
Mm-hmm.
also it's gonna work basically. Um, Not so much a surprise here. And then we have the thing you were mentioning just earlier, the group order by all. So typically here we have a group by, and instead of specifying each column, right, we just specify group by all. Right? Is that the same behavior with the order by?
It's similar. So the order by all is going to order by every column in a row and ascending by default. Just kind of sort of like how
Okay.
an Excel pivot table sorts. It's always going to sort ascending column by column. You can adjust that. You can say descending after it if you want to flip it around. You can even say nulls first, nulls last if you want to get picky about where your nulls end up in that ordering. Um, but it's really handy. A lot of people get around this by saying, "Oh, I'll order by the numbers 1, 2, and 3." But when I'm playing with a query for a long period of time, I always end up deleting columns and adding columns, and I always have to go back and change that number. I've seen a
Yeah.
query, like some of it's auto-generated, but I've seen a query that probably had like the numbers 1 through like 20 listed in like
Yeah.
a group by and in an order by, and but like number 16 would be removed. It's like, that is the least comprehensible thing ever, right? It's just like group by everything except column 16. Like, oh, what a mess. So I much prefer this way.
Yeah, and it's true that like here we're playing with like really simple example, right? But typically when you like in practice in production, you probably often have more than 3 column on your final data set. So the problem is basically bigger, right? Than here. So yeah, so this is something, the group bio, I was actually using it, but the order bio, actually, I wasn't aware that was also existing. So
Oh, awesome.
yeah. Um, so, and then we have, I put a 2B here, colon alias. And I think this is a bit the same thing than that I was saying earlier, those things that's happening behind the scene. And
Yes.
I completely forgot actually that basically if you're using an alias here in a select statement, they're not available in other clause in group by or having or where. So you have to repeat those, which can be tedious and just had more human error prone, right? Because you define a different place. And so this is like actually something that felt natural. And I don't know why at some point when writing SQL with DuckDB, it got me. And then recently I went to other cloud data warehouse because I do. I like shopping, around. And then it was not there. And I was like, but that's obvious. I knew that. And so like the magic kind of disappeared. So
Yeah. So
yeah, that's interesting. What do you think
this one's
about
a
it?
funny one. In a lot of cases, this is kind of going back to like, in general, we database folks love high precision. And in theory, there's no way to know for sure if the column you're using is the alias or the underlying one. So to be sure, they made you not use the aliases at all. But really, if there's no conflict, like if there isn't a column named year or month or keyword
Yeah,
mentions, the database should know. So DuckDB is going to guess, it's going to guess only when there's maximum certainty. If there is an ambiguity, it's going to tell you an error out and say, hey, please be picky about it. But when there's no ambiguity, the database should know that you just renamed something year, and it should let you use that column name wherever you want.
yeah. No, so that's definitely. So this is like really a one that I was using, and I kind of realized when I jumped out of DuckDB for a while.
Yeah, and then
Um,
once you jump out of it, you have to do like a whole nested CTE up above it or like a subquery to rename it and do it, or
yeah,
you have to just use these ugly functions in the rest of your query. So it's there's not a real good workaround.
yeah. It can be really verbose, right? If you don't have those, yeah. And so this one, I didn't run this one. And by the way, this is a data set from Hacker News. I believe we have quite a lot of data up to 2023 May. And it's counting the number of appearance of DuckDB in title of Hacker News posts. So you can see this was in October 2022. It was mentioned 10 times already. I think that was, start of the hockey stick that we were mentioning earlier, probably this time.
Uh,
So yeah,
the low part of the hockey stick was probably mid 2020 timeframe. Everyone decided, I'm stuck at home, locked inside this whole global pandemic thing. Let's check out a cool new database. I like the way
that's
people
true.
think.
That's true. That's definitely true. So reasonable colon alias. So it's kind of in the same vibe, or maybe it's duplicate.
Yeah,
No, what am I missing here?
yeah, it's very similar.
What did
The main
happen?
difference is the one above is like I can use something in my select in my where clause. Here it's I can use it in the
Ah,
next
yeah.
part of my select
Yeah.
clause, which is really nice.
Yeah. So here it's nested. There, your nesting operation on one alias and then another, then another. Yeah. So yeah, that's even a bit more advanced. I think pushing a thing maybe a bit too far. I think you can create like a lot of complexity into that.
You
But
can, you
yeah,
can. This one, I think Redshift, I think supports this, so it's been around a little bit. It's really convenient. It's one of those where I saw someone post, like I jumped from Redshift to somewhere else, and now this isn't there, and like I hate writing SQL now. Like it was a very extreme. They didn't say exactly that, but it was a very extreme reaction because like it's another case where the database should know what you're asking for with no
yeah,
ambiguity and should just figure it out. And so we're all about that.
yeah, indeed. This one I like it because actually I think I didn't say that, but like I think DuckDB kind of make peace with me with SQL. I was more a data frame person. I think there is two tool actually that has made peace with me with SQL. DuckDB definitely because the before the time I was using SQL was with Cloud Data Warehouse and so on, and just the interaction is not like for a software engineer, it's a bit complicated to test. To create unit tests to test it locally, and so DuckDB provide actually that right by being able simple to run. So now I can not only for data pipeline, but also just a typical task, or I want to inspect a CSV or a Parquet or something locally. Yes, I start to use SQL more as a toolkit than a language to program. And the other tool for me was definitely what do you think is the second tool that made peace with me around SQL?
Oh, I don't know. Not sure. But maybe IBIS doing some data frame SQL hybrid. I don't know.
No, that could be, but no, DBT or or any framework that basically help you to kind of again solve the gap of SQL for unit testing, create variable, reusing code, and I think like the two together is really nice. At least it feels like back in the days when I was developing Spark, Scala pipeline, and functional programming, right? And so coming back to SQL with those environment, feel nice. Anyway, that was like little parenthesis. All of that to say regarding function chaining. This remind me typical Scala, nesting data frame, this is why I like this one. Yeah. So what we do here is basically we have the string. We do uppercase, then we split it into a list, right? That's correct.
Yep.
And then we basically recombine it with a dot for each word, and then the concat basically make it back as a string. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the concat is at the very end. I think we just had a period at the end with that one. But
Okay. Sorry. Yeah,
yep,
that makes sense.
it's a
This
very
one is the
contrived example. So it took some work to come up with one on the fly here with no data for this one. But yeah, it's pretty neat. Basically, using the dot, it's just like in other languages that allow it. Where the first argument of that function is what you have right before the dot, and it
yeah.
keeps you from having to nest everything super deeply. And it's super, in
Yeah.
my opinion, super convenient. This was actually probably the most controversial of all of these when I talked about it on
Yeah.
Twitter. People were like, "Oh my gosh, like how am I going to parse this in my SQL tool that parses SQL?" It's like, yes, it is a new trick for SQL. This is true. Um, I haven't heard any pushback from people using it though. It's very handy for using. On the system builder side, I could see this is more complex. It's tougher to support DuckDB syntax if you have to parse it
Yeah.
now. But man, just it's much cleaner to look at.
Yeah, and you basically make friends with data frame people like me. So I think that's a pro.
I use pandas too,
Um,
but yeah, I'm more of a SQL at the start. Yeah.
exclude replace. So yeah, if you want to select everything except the column, some columns. So this is also pretty handy. Dynamic column selection. So here we just do a lambda function based on columns, right? And just to look any column that starts with pop, I think that's really useful. I've been using once or twice when I have a really large table that I'm not sure, and then when I do the describe, it's like you have a lot of things. Like really, when you're like doing some data mining, you have no idea the data you're dealing with. I think that like just searching based on some keyword and returning some of the column. So here we see that we have to population, source, and population.
Yeah, it's really great if you're generating columns automatically in some way, like if you're doing one hot encoding or you're doing some of the machine learning stuff where I've got, I'm trying to do a prediction, so I've got 3 different columns that are very similar but named the same, but I have 1,000 columns. This means that a lot of those workflows that where I used to be in a data frame and I used to be getting a list of my columns and doing a text search on that list and then doing some operation on that list of columns, you can do it all running SQL now.
Yeah. All right, pivot and pivot. So this is more like a SQL thing, an Excel thing, I think, for the people. I never like used that much pivot and pivot. What about you?
For me, I ended up using it a decent amount because in the group I was in at Intel, I was in the supply chain, and we were doing production scheduling. And if you have a schedule, it makes way more sense to look at it, pivot it out where every column is a new week, or every column is a new month. And it's just so much more visually appealing to look at that way that many, many things were structured that way. But it's always been best to do that as the very final step. Working with pivoted out columns is always messier in SQL. And so this is a really great kind of final step of just pivoted outwards. But that's the main use case for me. Here this is an example with years, kind of the same idea. Like it allows you to do a very quick visual interpretation of what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, I think that makes total sense. It's just like, yeah, it's true that again, like as I said, like I'm mostly a data frame person, so that's like a different side. But I know like people coming from Excel or a Google Sheet, they use that a lot because it's kind of those people actually don't use SQL, right? And I think like pivot or function in Excel is pretty popular.
Super popular. I call myself a reformed Excel guru. That was my gateway into programming was Excel VBA. So that was like the first thing where I was like, wait, I can just write this and like I can just delete files on the computer. Like what? Like this was news to me at the time. So I thought it was really cool and I got really into it. And that's what convinced me to actually go learn programming. I didn't do it as much in school. I just really that got me excited where I could just, oh, you mean I could do anything? Like, okay, this is pretty sweet. So that being said, I respect the power of Excel. There's some stuff that it's just so good. And pivoting is one of those where it just lets you use your visual pre-cognitive ability to just look at something and see the problem. And that's you can underestimate that pretty easily if you're not playing around with Excel all the time.
Yeah, I think Excel still has its place. I'm curious about like what thing the people live with us. Are you a fan of Excel or not? I think there is like really strong opinion depending on your profile. If you're sourcing from an Excel source or if you're actually a user from Excel, I think that's where
I've been on both sides of that. Yes, that is hard. I will agree with that very much. Yeah.
All right. String slicing. Yes, that's fun. That's again a bit like something. I mean, Python-esque, I would say. No, where does it come from exactly?
Yeah,
but you can slice string. Yeah, you can slice string based on position. Here, so I remove the 2, and I don't love DuckDB anymore. I love Duck. Just probably the same thing. And this one is another. This one is another. Yeah, this one is another thing that, based on I think, which was the one, the group bio. The trailing comma was also something which just happened, and then I hit my, a wall on another system to say, but yeah, of course I shouldn't have trailing comma. How does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just the folks building DuckDB are really familiar with their parser, and they were able to really kind of make it dance. And I think this is one of those where, you know, there's a lot of places they had to change this. Your select clause, your where
Yeah,
clause, your everywhere, but basically anywhere you can put commas, it handles a trailing comma at the end, and it won't be mad because
yeah,
the computer should be able to figure this out, right?
yeah,
We know
yeah.
that you don't actually need to put comma then nothingness. So
Yeah.
just another common sense, let the computer do the work situation.
So just to clarify for the audience is that normally this should be better for standard SQL, and this would throw an error. And actually, typically, the problem is that when you actually explore your query and you typically comment some column, then you might end up, for example, not in that case, you might end up with a trailing comma. So
Hmm.
that's where it's pretty handy to just not think about it. And that's again something that I knew initially on SQL that was needed, and it just disappeared in my mind until I try another system and I hit a wall.
The other fun
Reusable
thing that
column, yeah,
Oh, one last funny thing on that. That also to me taps into another, age-old fun argument in SQL land, which is
yeah,
trailing commas or leading commas. Like people have very
yeah,
strong opinions. I think the main reason that leading commas are preferred is because you're usually editing the last couple of columns and you want to avoid the trailing comma error. So to me,
yeah.
I used to be a leading comma guy. Like all my old queries, leading commas. I have changed. I'm a changed man, and I've been won
Yeah.
over to the trailing comma lifestyle. So try it. You might like
I'm
it.
curious. Are you in the audience using the comma in front because of that, or at the
Mm,
end? Drop in the
yes,
comments what
yes.
kind
I'd
of
love to hear about
SQL
that.
style are you, so that we solve the mystery. We are almost times out, so I'm gonna accelerate. But anyway, we are running at the end. The reusable, actually, that's a duplicate. We're running in circle, and we have two more columns with regular expression. We actually did that too, um, with
I think we did that with
more
the like
lambda
expression.
function
Yeah.
here,
Hmm.
but not with a regular expression. So that's also working. So the columns is pretty powerful. And this one has to be also, we did that too. I promise I didn't do the notebook when I was drunk. Maybe I was a bit tired. That's different. Okay.
No
I
problem at
just
all.
fix it. So we have 10, I think, which is actually a nice number, better than 12. So 10 things in SQL. Um, yeah, so that's about it for SQL journey, uh, about DuckDB, a little quiz also to run. When SQL was invented? Can
Oh,
I ask you again when the SQL was invented?
oh, it's a real quiz now. No, I think it was 74. Now I know. Waterloo, man. I got it.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. At least you learned something also from me. But yeah, the bottom line I think is like go over those query those this netbook and those function because they're really there to help you out to actually minimize the code. Also, I think that's really important to mention is that some of them make the code just more readable because it simplifies some stuff, right? And other stuff is happening for you know behind the scene kind of magic, like we saw the trailing comma, the group by all, if you get used to it and you learn for the first time SQL with DuckDB. So it's important to know that it's things that the DuckDB team has been put in place to just make SQL friendlier, right? Anything you
You
want
bet.
to add?
I would just say also, this is something where if there's more you can think of, let us know. Open a
Yeah.
discussion on the DuckDB open source repo. This is an area where we're happy to kind of lead the charge and do something that people haven't done before. Of the SQL should be able to do blank, but it doesn't today. Tell
Yeah.
us your stories of pain and woe of, I always get this dang error and maybe we can fix it. Maybe we can solve it for everybody.